Explore the dark chapter of human zoos, where people were exhibited like exhibits. Discover how these shows, often justified by racism, reflected a twisted view of humanity. From late 19th century exhibitions to global displays, this history is both shocking and essential to acknowledge. Let's remember and educate ourselves about this injustice, ensuring it never happens again.
A poster from the era of human zoos, depicting a Negro alongside a monkey, reveals a dark chapter of history. Racial discrimination has deep roots in European and American culture, stemming from the enslavement of African people and the ethnic cleansing of Native Americans. Human zoos, or ethnological expositions, showcased Africans and other indigenous people as if they were animals.
Human zoos were a dark chapter in human history. They were exhibits that displayed people of color as exhibits. These exhibits were popular in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Millions of people visited them. This popularity was fueled by racist ideologies. These ideologies saw people of color as inferior. The purpose of human zoos was to reinforce existing power structures. They aimed to justify colonialism. The exhibits presented a distorted view of different cultures. This view stripped away the humanity of the individuals on display. Human zoos were more than just entertainment. They were tools of oppression. These exhibits had a lasting impact. This impact continues to affect race relations today. The dehumanization of individuals was central to human zoos. Indigenous people were often displayed in cages. They were sometimes placed alongside animals. This arrangement reinforced the racist notion of their perceived primitiveness. They were forced to perform dances and rituals. They participated in mock battles for the amusement of visitors. Their cultural practices were misrepresented. They were turned into spectacles. Anthropologists and scientists used these exhibitions for their own purposes. They studied and measured racial differences. This practice further dehumanized the individuals on display. It contributed to the development of scientific racism. Karl Hagenbeck was a German animal merchant. He played a key role in popularizing human zoos. Starting in the 1870s, Hagenbeck began incorporating human displays into his animal exhibitions. Hagenbeck claimed an educational purpose behind his displays. He argued that they provided a glimpse into different cultures. However, his methods were exploitative. He often obtained people from slave traders. He subjected them to inhumane conditions. Hagenbeck's exhibitions toured major European cities. They drew huge crowds. This popularity fueled the demand for more human exhibits. It solidified Hagenbeck's place as a pioneer in the shameful industry of human zoos.
By the late 1800s, human zoos were widespread across Europe and even reached New York. Germany's People's Show in the early 20th century attracted 300,000 visitors per city. The 1889 World's Fair drew 28 million people to see 400 indigenous people as the main attraction. In 1874, Karl Hagenbeck, a German animal trader, introduced the concept of zoos featuring both animals and people. Hagenbeck sent an associate to Sudan in 1876 to bring back Nubians for display in European collections. These exhibitions became hugely popular in cities like Paris, London, and Berlin. Karl Hagenbeck's human zoo side shows attracted 500,000 people in Paris. By the 1930s, Germany had around 400 human zoos with strong racist overtones. Black people were often displayed with monkeys to justify a common origin. Colonial exhibitions in Marseille and Paris displayed naked and half-naked humans in cages. More than 35,000 indigenous people were taken from their homelands to participate in these exhibitions. Entire families were clothed in traditional costumes and placed in replicas of their native villages. Europeans gawked at bare-breasted African women and reenactments of primitive life. Anthropologists used these exhibitions to support their theories of racial superiority. Human zoos highlighted cultural differences and ranked Africans on the same level as primates. For 400 years, Europeans acquired a taste for seeing exotic human specimens. The 1904 St. Louis World's Fair featured Oda Benga and Booty Pygmy as a specimen of an inferior race. Oda Benga was displayed in a cage with primates at the Bronx Zoo in New York. He was advertised as a savage and forced to perform tricks with apes. Ota Benga's teeth were filed into sharp points, making him appear more barbaric. The New York Times described him as a bushman, not rated high in the human scale.
His story is a tragic example of the cruelty of human zoos. He was displayed at the 1904 St. Louis World's Fair. He was later exhibited in the Bronx Zoo. At the Bronx Zoo, Ota Benga was forced to share a cage with primates. He was made to perform for visitors. This treatment sparked public outrage. It eventually led to his release. However, the trauma of his experiences stayed with him. In 1916, Ota Benga tragically died by suicide. His story serves as a stark reminder of the devastating impact of human zoos. Sarah Baartman, A Legacy of Shame. Sarah Baartman was a Khoisan woman from South Africa. She was exhibited in Europe in the early 1800s. She was put on display because of her statopigia, which is a genetic trait common to Khoisan women. Sarah Baartman was subjected to humiliation and scientific racism. Her body was studied and displayed after her death. This exploitation continued for over a century.
She was poked, prodded, and subjected to inhumane experiments until her death in 1815. Her remains were displayed in a Paris museum until 1974 and finally returned to South Africa in 2002.
Her story highlights the intersection of racism, sexism, and colonialism in the practice of human zoos.
The creation of human zoos manipulated millions into accepting racial inequality, a dark legacy that still lingers today.
Human zoos were not isolated events. They were often incorporated into larger colonial exhibitions and world's fairs. Events like the 1889 and 1900 World's Fairs in Paris and the 1904 St. Louis World's Fair prominently featured human zoo displays. These events drew millions of visitors. They normalized the exploitation of indigenous peoples. World's fairs were meant to celebrate human progress. However, the inclusion of human zoos exposed a darker side. They revealed the hypocrisy at the heart of these grand exhibitions. The legacy of human zoos continues to affect us today. These exhibits contributed to the development of racist stereotypes. They reinforced the idea of a racial hierarchy. The impact of human zoos is evident in the way different cultures are represented in media. It's present in the biases that continue to plague our society. While human zoos are no longer in existence, their legacy serves as a reminder of the dangers of racism and prejudice. It underscores the importance of fighting for equality and justice. These exhibits presented a distorted view of indigenous cultures. They were designed to justify oppression. Black and indigenous cultures have rich histories and achievements. These achievements were deliberately erased by colonialism and racism. By learning about the true histories of marginalized groups, we can begin to dismantle the harmful legacy of human zoos.